The twinkling Christmas tree lights seemed to mock me. Usually, I love this time of year. The smell of pine, the cheesy Christmas music, even Mom's slightly burnt sugar cookies, it all felt like home. But this year, home felt like a battleground. My name is Ellie Foster, and I'm 26 years old. This Christmas morning started like any other, with forced smiles and the rustling of wrapping paper. Only, beneath the surface, the air crackled with unspoken tension between me and my older sister, Rachel. Rachel has always been the golden child. Beautiful, charismatic, and seemingly incapable of doing wrong in our parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, was always the responsible one, the quiet achiever who never caused trouble. This dynamic had shaped our relationship since childhood, creating a chasm of resentment that seemed to widen with each passing year. The tension had been building for weeks, a low hum of anxiety that vibrated through the house. Rachel had been acting strange, secretive, and unusually irritable. She snapped at Mom for the smallest things and avoided any direct conversation with me. I knew something was brewing, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Then came the argument. It started innocently enough, a disagreement over who got the last piece of Mom's sugar cookie. But it quickly escalated, fueled by years of pent-up frustrations and unspoken accusations. Rachel's words were like daggers, each one aimed to wound. She accused me of being jealous of her, of always trying to undermine her, of never being happy for her successes. Finally, she said the words that shattered any semblance of Christmas cheer. "Just get out, Ellie," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "I don't want you here. This is my family, my Christmas. Just leave." My heart sank. I stared at her, stunned. Our parents stood frozen, caught in the crossfire. Rachel had gone too far. This wasn't just a sibling squabble, it was a calculated act of cruelty. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. It was time to reveal the truth. It was time for Rachel to face the consequences of her actions. My hand instinctively went to my bag, clutching the red folder that held the key to exposing her lies. Rachel's demand hung in the air, thick and heavy like the scent of burnt pine needles. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the venom with which they were delivered. It was a culmination of years of subtle digs, passive-aggressive comments, and outright dismissals. This wasn't just a sisterly spat, it was a calculated attack, designed to wound and humiliate. The cookie incident, as trivial as it seemed, was merely the spark that ignited a powder keg of resentment. Looking back, there were countless moments when Rachel's true nature revealed itself. Little things, easily dismissed at the time, but which now formed a clear pattern of manipulation and self-centeredness. Like the time she borrowed my favorite sweater and returned it stained with who knows what, claiming it was an accident. Or the way she always managed to steer conversations back to herself, her accomplishments, her problems. But the most glaring example was how she treated our parents. On the surface, she was the doting daughter, always showering them with affection and praise. But beneath the facade, there was a subtle undercurrent of control. She knew how to play them, how to manipulate their emotions to get what she wanted. Whether it was a new car, a designer handbag, or a lavish vacation, Rachel always found a way to convince them that she deserved it. The real kicker, the incident that truly solidified my resolve to expose her, happened last summer. Mom had been saving up for a special anniversary trip with Dad, a dream vacation to Italy they had talked about for years. I overheard Rachel on the phone with a friend, bragging about how she had convinced Mom to invest the money in a sure-thing business venture. Of course, the venture was nothing more than a scam, a way for Rachel to line her own pockets at our parents' expense. I confronted her about it, of course. But she simply laughed it off, dismissing my concerns as naive and uninformed. She even tried to gaslight me, suggesting that I was imagining things, that I was just jealous of her business acumen. That was the turning point. That was when I realized that Rachel's behavior wasn't just annoying or selfish, it was actively harmful. She was hurting our parents, taking advantage of their love and trust for her own personal gain. And I couldn't stand by and watch it happen any longer. The red folder became my mission. The argument about the sugar cookie, while seemingly insignificant, was carefully orchestrated by Rachel. It was a trap, baited with childishness and sprung with calculated cruelty. She knew my weaknesses, my sensitivities, and she used them against me with ruthless precision. It wasn't just about the cookie. It was about control. Rachel had always needed to be the center of attention, the one everyone fawned over. My mere presence threatened that, reminding her, and perhaps our parents, that she wasn't the only star in the family. The way she snatched the last cookie, a smug grin plastered on her face, was deliberate. It was a power play, a way of asserting her dominance. And when I dared to challenge her, to point out her selfishness, she pounced. "Oh, here we go again," she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ellie's always the victim, isn't she? Always so quick to judge, so eager to criticize." Her words were like a carefully crafted script, designed to provoke a reaction. And I, foolishly, took the bait. I reminded her of the Italy trip, of the way she had manipulated Mom into giving her the money. I accused her of being a liar, a cheat, a parasite who preyed on our parents' generosity. That's when she lost it. Her eyes narrowed, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you?" she screamed. "How dare you accuse me of such things? You're just jealous, Ellie. Jealous because I'm successful, because I'm happy, because Mom and Dad actually love me." That last comment stung the most. It was a low blow, a direct hit to my deepest insecurities. I knew it wasn't true, but the words still echoed in my mind, fueling the fire of our argument. It was in that moment, amidst the shouting and accusations, that Rachel kicked me out. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was a calculated move, designed to silence me, to banish me from the family Christmas. "Get out, Ellie," she shrieked, pointing towards the door. "I don't want you here. You're ruining everything. Just leave and don't come back." The unfairness of it all was overwhelming. I had done nothing wrong, yet I was being punished, banished from my own home on Christmas morning. That's when the red folder became my weapon, my only means of defense against Rachel's calculated cruelty. It was time to fight back. It was time for the truth to be revealed. Rachel's manipulative tendencies weren't a recent development, they were ingrained in her personality from a young age. Even as children, she possessed a knack for twisting situations to her advantage, often at my expense. I remember one summer, when I was about 8 and Rachel was 10, we were selling lemonade at a stand in front of our house. It was my idea, and I had spent hours meticulously squeezing lemons and stirring in the perfect amount of sugar. Rachel, however, quickly took over, charming the customers with her winning smile and outgoing personality. She even started charging more when I wasn't looking, pocketing the extra money for herself. When I confronted her about it, she simply shrugged and said, "Business is business, Ellie. You have to be aggressive to succeed." Another time, I was blamed for breaking Mom's favorite vase, even though I knew Rachel had done it while playing inside. She had cleverly diverted suspicion onto me, knowing that I was more likely to confess out of guilt, even if I was innocent. Mom, of course, believed her, and I was grounded for a week. Rachel never admitted her guilt, and I carried the burden of her actions. It wasn't just me she manipulated, she also targeted our parents. She was a master of playing the victim, feigning illness or sadness to get their attention and sympathy. If she wanted a new toy or a special treat, she would concoct elaborate stories about how she was being bullied at school or how she was feeling left out. Mom and Dad, always eager to please her, would cave into her demands, reinforcing her manipulative behavior. As we got older, her tactics became more sophisticated. She learned how to use flattery and guilt to get what she wanted, and she became adept at pitting me against our parents. She would subtly undermine my achievements, making me seem less capable or less deserving of their praise. She created a constant sense of competition between us, always striving to be the favorite, the one who received the most attention and affection. These childhood experiences shaped our relationship, creating a deep-seated resentment that simmered beneath the surface. I knew that Rachel was capable of anything, that she would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. And that's why, on Christmas morning, when she kicked me out, I wasn't surprised. I was simply prepared. The red folder was my shield, my weapon against her years of manipulation and deceit. It was time to even the playing field. The red folder didn't materialize overnight. It was born from a seed of suspicion, watered by a series of unsettling discoveries. The first inkling that something was amiss came a few months prior to the Italy trip debacle. I was helping Mom clean out the attic when I stumbled upon a misplaced bank statement. It wasn't addressed to Mom or Dad, it was Rachel's. What caught my eye was the unusually high balance, far exceeding what I knew she earned at her relatively low-paying job. Curiosity piqued, I glanced at the transaction history. There were several large deposits, all labeled vaguely as consulting fees. But what truly raised my suspicions were the withdrawals. A significant portion of the money was being transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I knew Rachel wasn't involved in any legitimate consulting work that would warrant such transactions. The offshore account, in particular, set off alarm bells. It smelled like tax evasion, or worse. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia, telling myself that I was simply being overly suspicious. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it continued to grow. Then came the phone call. I was working from home one afternoon when I overheard Rachel talking on the phone in the backyard. She thought she was alone, but the wind carried her words through the open window. "Yes, the transfer went through," she said, her voice hushed and conspiratorial. "They haven't noticed a thing, they're so trusting, it's almost pathetic. Don't worry, I'll keep skimming off the top, they'll never suspect a thing." The blood drained from my face. I knew, with chilling certainty, that she was talking about our parents. She was stealing from them, right under their noses, and she was reveling in their naivete. That's when I decided to take action. I couldn't stand by and watch her exploit our parents' trust any longer. I needed to gather evidence, to build a case that would expose her lies and hold her accountable for her actions. The red folder became my repository for all the incriminating information I could find, a testament to Rachel's deceit and a symbol of my determination to bring her to justice. The hunt had begun. Gathering evidence against Rachel was a delicate dance, a clandestine operation conducted under the guise of normalcy. I had to be careful not to arouse her suspicion, to avoid tipping her off to my investigation. I became a shadow, observing her movements, listening to her conversations, and meticulously documenting every detail. I started by scrutinizing the family finances. I volunteered to help Mom with the bills, carefully reviewing bank statements and credit card transactions. I noticed a pattern of unauthorized charges, small amounts disguised as legitimate expenses, but which, when added up, amounted to a significant sum. There were restaurant bills for meals Rachel claimed to have paid for herself, online purchases for items she never mentioned, and ATM withdrawals from accounts she wasn't supposed to have access to. I also started keeping a log of Rachel's phone calls. I would discreetly record the times and durations of her conversations, noting any suspicious numbers or topics. I learned that she was frequently in contact with a shady financial advisor in the Cayman Islands, discussing investment strategies and offshore accounts. The red folder became my sanctuary, a safe haven for all the incriminating evidence I collected. I organized the documents chronologically, creating a detailed timeline of Rachel's fraudulent activities. I included copies of bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, and even handwritten notes documenting my observations. It was a painstaking process, requiring hours of meticulous research and analysis. But I was driven by a sense of purpose, a determination to expose Rachel's lies and protect our parents from further harm. The more evidence I gathered, the more appalled I became. Rachel's deception was far more extensive than I had initially imagined. She had been systematically stealing from our parents for years, exploiting their trust and generosity for her own selfish gain. The weight of the secret was crushing. I longed to confide in someone, to share the burden of my knowledge. But I knew that I couldn't trust anyone, not even our parents. Rachel had woven a web of deceit so intricate that anyone who tried to unravel it would risk being caught in its threads. I was alone in my quest for justice, armed with nothing but a red folder and a burning desire to expose the truth. And on Christmas morning, when Rachel kicked me out, I knew that the time had come to unleash the power of my evidence. The red folder was about to become her downfall. Back in the present, standing in the living room amidst the wreckage of Christmas morning, I clutched the red folder tighter. Rachel's ultimatum, her demand that I leave, had forced my hand. I hadn't intended to reveal the truth on Christmas, but she had left me no choice. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Not until you apologize to Mom and Dad, and admit what you've been doing." Rachel scoffed, rolling her eyes. "What are you talking about, Ellie? You're being ridiculous. Just leave, and we can all forget this ever happened." "I'm not being ridiculous, Rachel. I'm being honest. And I'm not leaving until you tell the truth." I raised the red folder, holding it aloft like a weapon. "This," I said, "is proof of everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every stolen dollar. It's all in here." Our parents stared at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and apprehension. They had no idea what I was talking about, but they sensed the gravity of the situation. "What is that, Ellie?" Mom asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What's in that folder?" "The truth, Mom," I replied. "The truth about Rachel. The truth about how she's been stealing from you for years." Rachel's face paled. She knew that I wasn't bluffing. She knew that the red folder contained irrefutable evidence of her crimes. "You wouldn't," she said, her voice laced with desperation. "You wouldn't do that to me. Not on Christmas." "I don't want to do this, Rachel," I said. "But you've given me no choice. You kicked me out of my own home on Christmas morning. You forced my hand." I took a step closer to our parents, holding out the red folder. "I'm going to show you what Rachel has been doing," I said. "But before I do, I'm giving her one last chance. Apologize, Rachel. Tell them the truth. And maybe, just maybe, we can salvage what's left of this Christmas." The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the crackling of the fireplace. Rachel stood frozen, her eyes darting back and forth between me and our parents. The moment of truth had arrived. It was now or never. Would she confess, or would I be forced to expose her secrets? The fate of our family hung in the balance. Rachel's silence stretched, taut and suffocating. Then, a slow, theatrical sob escaped her lips. "Oh, Mom, Dad," she cried, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "Don't listen to her. Ellie's just trying to ruin everything. She's always been jealous of me, always trying to make me look bad." She turned her tear-filled eyes towards our parents, her expression pleading. "You know I would never do anything to hurt you. You know I love you more than anything in the world." It was a masterful performance, a carefully crafted attempt to manipulate their emotions and regain control of the narrative. She was gaslighting them, trying to make them doubt their own perceptions, to believe that I was the one who was lying, the one who was trying to tear the family apart. "Ellie's been struggling lately," she continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "She's been under a lot of stress at work, and I think she's starting to lose it. She's imagining things, Dad. She's twisting things around to make me look bad." She stepped closer to Mom, reaching out to take her hand. "Mom, you know me. You know I would never steal from you. This is crazy. Ellie's just trying to get attention. She's always been so dramatic. Her performance was sickening. She was preying on our parents' love and trust, exploiting their vulnerabilities to protect herself from the consequences of her actions. Rachel, stop it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Don't you dare try to manipulate them like this. I have proof, Rachel. I have evidence. You can't deny the truth. I opened the red folder, revealing the stacks of documents inside. These are bank statements, Rachel. These are credit card bills. These are phone records. They all prove what you've been doing. But Rachel refused to be deterred. She doubled down on her denial, her voice rising in hysteria. Those are lies, Ellie. Those are all lies. You fabricated those documents. You're trying to frame me. She turned back to our parents, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. Mom, Dad, please believe me. Ellie's trying to destroy me. She's always hated me. She wants to take everything away from me. It was a desperate attempt to cling to her carefully constructed facade, to maintain her position as the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But I knew that her lies were about to crumble. The truth was in the red folder, waiting to be unleashed. And I was determined to expose her, no matter the cost. Ignoring Rachel's desperate pleas, I turned to our parents, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside me. Mom, Dad, I know this is hard to believe, but I need you to look at this. I pulled out the first document from the red folder, a copy of Rachel's bank statement from 6 months ago. This is Rachel's account statement from June, I explained, pointing to a specific transaction. See this deposit of $5,000 labeled consulting fees? That money came directly from your joint savings account, Dad. Rachel transferred it without your knowledge or consent. Dad frowned, his eyes scanning the document. That can't be right, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. I would have noticed a withdrawal like that. I pulled out another document, a copy of a forged withdrawal slip, bearing Dad's signature, or rather, a very poor imitation of it. She forged your signature, Dad, I said, pointing to the obvious discrepancies. She's been doing this for years, siphoning off small amounts of money, hoping you wouldn't notice. I continued to present the evidence, methodically dismantling Rachel's web of lies. I showed them credit card statements with unauthorized charges, phone records detailing her conversations with the shady financial advisor, and handwritten notes documenting my observations. This, I said, holding up a copy of the deed to a small condo in the Bahamas, is where a lot of the stolen money ended up. Rachel bought this property using your money, Mom and Dad. She's been using it as a vacation home, all while you've been struggling to make ends meet. With each document I presented, our parents' faces grew more ashen. The shock and disbelief were slowly replaced by a dawning realization, a horrifying understanding of the extent of Rachel's betrayal. Rachel, meanwhile, stood silently, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. The tears had stopped, replaced by a look of cold, hard anger. She knew that her lies had been exposed, that there was no escaping the consequences of her actions. I have more, I said, my voice unwavering. I have years' worth of evidence, documenting every instance of Rachel's theft and manipulation. I can show you exactly how much money she's stolen, exactly how she's been lying to you, exactly how she's been exploiting your trust. The red folder lay open on the coffee table, its contents a stark and irrefutable indictment of Rachel's crimes. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The Christmas morning silence was now filled with the heavy weight of betrayal and the shattered remnants of a family's trust. The silence that followed my presentation was deafening. Mom sat frozen, staring blankly at the open red folder, her face pale and drawn. Dad, on the other hand, ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting back and forth between the documents and Rachel, a look of utter disbelief etched on his face. I I don't understand, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Rachel, is this true? Did you really do all this? Rachel remained silent, her head bowed, her shoulders slumped. Her silence was an admission of guilt, a confirmation of everything I had revealed. Mom finally broke the silence, her voice a choked sob. Rachel, she cried, how could you? How could you do this to us? We trusted you. We loved you. How could you betray us like this? Tears streamed down her face as she reached out to touch Rachel, her hand trembling. But Rachel flinched away, avoiding her mother's gaze. I don't know what to say, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I messed up. Messed up? Dad roared, his voice filled with fury. You stole from us, Rachel. You lied to us. You betrayed our trust. That's more than just messing up. He stood up, his face red with anger, and paced back and forth across the living room. I can't believe this, he muttered. I can't believe my own daughter would do something like this. After everything we've done for you, Rachel. After all the sacrifices we've made. Mom continued to sob, her body racked with grief. All those years, she said, her voice breaking. All those years we struggled to make ends meet, while you were living it up in the Bahamas, using our money. How could you be so selfish? How could you be so cruel? The Christmas morning joy had been completely obliterated, replaced by a profound sense of loss and betrayal. The parents, who had always loved and trusted Rachel unconditionally, were now grappling with the horrifying reality that their own daughter had been systematically stealing from them for years. The weight of their heartbreak was palpable, filling the room with an unbearable sadness. The red folder, once a symbol of my determination to expose the truth, now felt like a heavy burden, a constant reminder of the damage that Rachel had inflicted on our family. The Christmas tree lights, once so cheerful and festive, now seemed to mock us, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. The magic of Christmas had been shattered, replaced by the cold, hard reality of betrayal and deceit. The future of our family hung precariously in the balance, uncertain and fraught with pain. Seeing the devastation she had caused, Rachel finally attempted to justify her actions, but her words rang hollow, failing to offer any real remorse or accountability. I needed the money, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I was in debt. I had bills to pay. You don't understand what it's like to be struggling, Mom and Dad. Struggling? Dad scoffed, his voice filled with disbelief. You had a good job, Rachel. We always helped you out when you needed it. You never told us you were in debt. I was ashamed, she said, her eyes darting away from their gaze. I didn't want you to think I was a failure. I just needed a little help, and I didn't know how else to get it. Her explanation was weak, unconvincing. It didn't explain the condo in the Bahamas' lavish spending, or the offshore accounts. It was a pathetic attempt to minimize her actions, to paint herself as a victim of circumstance. That's not the whole story, Rachel, I said, my voice firm. You weren't just trying to pay off bills. You were living a life of luxury, spending our parents' money on things you didn't need. Rachel glared at me, her eyes filled with resentment. You wouldn't understand, Ellie, she snapped. You've always been so judgmental, so quick to criticize. You don't know what it's like to have dreams, to want something more out of life. And stealing from our parents is how you achieve those dreams? I retorted. Is that what you're saying? That it's okay to exploit their trust and generosity for your own selfish gain? Rachel remained silent, unable to offer a coherent response. She shifted her weight from foot to foot, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. I deserved it, she finally mumbled, her voice barely audible. I deserved to have nice things. I deserved to be happy. You always favored Ellie, Mom and Dad. You always treated me like I was second best." Her words revealed the true source of her actions, a deep-seated sense of entitlement, a belief that she was somehow owed something by our parents. She had convinced herself that she was justified in taking their money, that she was simply claiming what was rightfully hers. But her justifications rang hollow, failing to mask the selfishness and greed that had driven her actions. She had betrayed our parents' trust, stolen their hard-earned money, and shattered the bonds of our family. And no amount of excuses could ever change that. The Christmas morning silence was heavy with disappointment. The immediate aftermath of Rachel's exposure was a whirlwind of anger, grief, and confusion. The carefully constructed facade of our family had been shattered, revealing the deep-seated cracks and resentments that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Dad, consumed by rage, demanded that Rachel leave the house immediately. He couldn't bear to look at her, to be in the same room with the daughter who had so callously betrayed his trust. Rachel, defeated and humiliated, packed her bags in silence, her eyes red and swollen. She didn't say goodbye, didn't offer any further apologies. She simply walked out the door, leaving a gaping hole in our family. Mom, heartbroken and devastated, retreated into herself, spending hours alone in her room. In the days that followed, a strange mixture of relief and regret washed over me. Relief that the secret was finally out, that Rachel's lies had been exposed, and that our parents were finally aware of the truth. But also, a deep sense of regret for the pain and devastation that my actions had caused. I had always known that revealing the truth would have consequences, but I hadn't fully anticipated the extent of the damage. Our family was shattered, our relationship strained, and the future uncertain. I couldn't help but wonder if I had done the right thing, if there was another way to have handled the situation. The red folder, which had once been a symbol of my determination and strength, now felt like a constant reminder of the destruction I had wrought. I knew that I had acted out of a sense of love and loyalty for my parents, but the weight of the consequences was heavy to bear. I tried to talk to Mom, to offer her comfort and support, but she remained distant and withdrawn. She seemed to blame both Rachel and me for what had happened, unable to fully process the betrayal and the resulting fallout. Dad, on the other hand, oscillated between anger and grief, struggling to reconcile the image of the daughter he had loved with the reality of the person she had become. He confided in me about his disappointment, his hurt, and his confusion, but he also made it clear that he needed time to process everything, to figure out how to move forward. I found myself questioning my own motives, wondering if I had been driven by a desire for justice or a need for revenge. Had I been so focused on exposing Rachel's lies that I had lost sight of the bigger picture, the importance of family and forgiveness? The truth was, I didn't know. I was lost in a sea of mixed emotions, struggling to navigate the complex aftermath of my actions. I had revealed the red folder, exposed Rachel's lies, and shattered our family. But I had also, perhaps, created an opportunity for healing, for rebuilding, and for a new beginning. Whether we would be able to seize that opportunity remained to be seen. The future was uncertain. Despite the pain and uncertainty, a tiny flicker of hope remained. A hope that, somehow, we could find a way to heal, to rebuild, and to move forward as a family. I knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, filled with challenges and setbacks. But I also believed that, with time and effort, reconciliation was possible. A few weeks after Christmas, Mom started attending therapy sessions. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. She began to open up about her feelings, to process her grief and anger, and to explore the underlying issues that had contributed to Rachel's behavior. Dad, too, started to soften. He still felt betrayed and hurt, but he also recognized that Rachel was his daughter, and that he couldn't simply erase her from his life. He started to talk about forgiveness, about the possibility of eventually reconciling with her. As for Rachel, she remained estranged, refusing to answer our calls or respond to our messages. I knew that she was ashamed and humiliated, and that it would take time for her to process everything that had happened. But I also hoped that, deep down, she regretted her actions, and that she would eventually be willing to make amends. One evening, as I was helping Mom decorate the Christmas tree for the following year, a much smaller and less elaborate tree than usual, she turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Do you think," she asked, her voice trembling, "do you think we'll ever be a family again?" I took her hand and squeezed it tightly. "I don't know, Mom," I said. "But I hope so. I truly hope so." The future remained uncertain, a tapestry of possibilities and challenges. Whether we would achieve reconciliation or succumb to ruin remained to be seen. But as I looked at the twinkling lights on the Christmas tree, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope, a belief that, even in the darkest of times, love and forgiveness could prevail. The red folder was closed now, put away. The damage was done, but maybe, just maybe, the healing could begin. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.